So, Sis, I'll introduce myself quickly. So, my name is Mark Cipolle. I lead up our sales and solutions engineering function here at Conexiom. And Sis and I have known each other for close to 10 years now. I think it's been about that. And time's gone quickly, Sis. Maybe you can introduce yourself to the group here. Maybe you can talk about your current role with Dakota Supply Group, and then a little bit about your background in distribution.
Sure. I'm Sis Richardt, and I tell people that even though I live in the South, the reason I have the name Sis is every family has a sis or sister. I happen to have 6 older brothers. And so I'm the only girl, and I'm rotten, and I do it well. I've been in wholesale distribution for a little over 50 years now, so I look really good. And so everyone's got to agree with me on that one.
Well, I agree with you.
Oh, thank you. I will be at Insight, so I look forward if anyone's there to please grab a hold to me, ask questions. I don't mind. I started in this industry as very young and as a manufacturer's rep of electrical equipment. And then I started working for the wholesale houses, and I was in that for 17 years. And there was a package before Eclipse, which is what I'm on right now, called shims. And I installed that as a user. And they ended up hiring me to go to work for them. And when they approached me, I was a little surprised because I was going, hey, I'm not a programmer. And they said, no, we're not hiring you for that. They said, we're hiring you for 17 years distribution knowledge. We can take distribution and teach computer. We can't take computer and teach distribution. So that's how I ended up working for shims, the package before Eclipse. And then when Eclipse was written, I came over to Eclipse. Now, when you start in distribution, you die in distribution. I'm proof of it. I am back out in the field now working for DSG. I've been with DSG since October, but I've been back out in the field helping clients and working for clients for about 7 or 8 years now. When I first came back out in the industry, it was with CAP USA. And CAP was industrial. And they're also GSA. And with industrial, you don't have as many vendors that are EDI. So I had attended a conference. And when I was at a conference, I saw Conexiom. And I go over and I speak to them. And when I was talking to them, they handle strictly the customer side then. And so I go back to the company and I speak with one of the owners. And I was going, you know, this is a good package, but we really need the other side more. We didn't need it for the customer. So we set up a call with Conexiom and we spoke to them and we said, hey, we've got a little proposition to talk to you about. Because our problem is our AP was being bombarded. We were hitting 60 hours a week for 3 people. And so we were hitting that 60 hours, 20 hours for each person. That was all overtime, and it was insane. And they weren't able to stay caught up. If one went on vacation, that was a nightmare. That didn't help. So we said, we need help on this. We need a way to get these items in here, get these payables in when someone's out. So we made a proposition with Conexiom and said, hey, do you think you can help us with this? And Mark stepped in. They said, sure. So we partnered together and created the AP side of Conexiom. So I tell people, if you don't like the way it works, you can't blame Conexiom. It's my fault because they did what I asked them to do. And what it did for us, we were going to have to hire another 1.5 persons in that department to even get their head above water. And still that was going to keep us on the backside of keeping everything up to date if someone was out. So by going over to Conexiom, I did not have to hire another 1.5 people for that department. I was in fact able to relieve one of the people and move them into another area of the company so that we could utilize them elsewhere where help was needed. So Conexiom was a huge, huge help. It's very easy to interface, very easy to use. It uses the 810Q with Eclipse, which is EDI. So if you have EDI, it's a very easy function to come in. We use it very heavily here at DSG Same thing for AP, because it is just a wonderful connection. Even though we are electrical, plumbing, HVAC, waterworks at DSG, and you have a lot of vendors on EDI, you still have a lot that don't. So it is definitely your solution. And the other upside of it is, since the initial install, they've added the expense side of it. So you can bring your expenses in, which is also awesome that you can now do that. And that saves a lot of time. Now, I'm working with our AP people here at DSG to start looking at bringing in more of the expense side. And one of them, with the first area I want to look at, is bringing in like a UPS, bringing in any freight vendors, bringing in credit card vendors, to see how that'll help bring that in and get that started. Now, one of the big pluses with doing this is you cut down on keystroke errors. Because you are mapping one-to-one, everything comes in, and it will read your EDI settings for bringing the information in, and you can do line item checking your information, or you can do just the whole invoice side of it and just check PO and verify that way. And what makes it so great is, since you don't have those keystroke errors, you are only deal with the ones that don't reconcile, because there could be a quantity error, that could be a pricing error. So that shuts down a lot of that.
So, hey,
and so it's
can I double click on that point for a second? So when you say a
yes.
pricing error or quantity error, do you mean that the vendor invoice disagrees with what your purchase order had? Is that what you mean by
yes,
by an error? Okay,
that's correct.
What we can do, because you covered a lot of ground there, is focus on just a couple of the setup pieces for people to maybe help get everybody to the same place, and as you, from an understanding perspective. So
sure.
When it was very clear explanation to me about the business problem you had, which is you had too many accounts payable invoices coming in and not enough hands to handle. And your vendors weren't able to give you EDI at that time. So you needed a way to automate the processing of those vendor invoices, if I understood it right.
That is correct.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter the platform that you're on. You have the same issues in all industries. Is that anytime you have to manually enter in an invoice, you are going to get keying errors. It's going to happen. Well, the beauty with Conexiom, it is matching one for one between the vendor invoice. And so it's bringing it into your system, so you don't have these keying errors. So that's a big help right there.
Oh, that's cool.
And and so anytime that you can cut out that side of it, that helps. And so it does speed up the time for working also, because it can bring it in much faster than you can actually key it in also. So that's a big plus. And it also brings in these invoices all day long if you choose to do it that way. So it's instantly being updated. So that's another plus. It's not like you have to wait for an overnight process or anything like that, unless your ERP requires it. And most of them don't. Most of them with something like this, it comes in instantly. So there's no lag time getting this information in there. Another big thing is, by it being automated, you don't miss cash discounts on these invoices. That if you've got people keying and they're behind, you could easily miss cash discounts. And that's money out of your pocket. So that's another big plus. They're getting in time, that you can now see what's going on and you don't miss those cash discounts. Another big plus.
So let me switch the conversation a little bit here. You're now with Dakota Supply Group. Maybe tell the team a little bit about the Dakota Supply Group and the company's sort of mission, the customers you serve, and I'm assuming that Dakota is also a company that's using Eclipse today.
That is correct. They've been on Eclipse for a little over a year. Dakota has approximately between 800 and 900 employees. We are growing leaps and bounds, over 40 branches now.
Wow.
Our AP department is huge. And so we have thousands of invoices coming in, not hundreds, thousands. And so we are heavily use Conexiom here, and it's wonderful. And here again, it brings everything in instantly. We only deal with things that don't match, so we're dealing with the exception. So that also speeds up our time working with this. And here again, it saves from having to add other people in the mix of it to manually enter things, and where you're getting behind and you're having keying errors. So Dakota is a fairly large company.
And when you rolled it out at Dakota, what assistance or what involvement did you need to get from your suppliers?
Well, at this time, I wasn't with Dakota when they first brought Conexiom on, but from experience, I've helped a lot of people when they go to Conexiom. So I do a lot of consulting work outside that my company blesses, helping people with Conexiom, because I'm this type of person. If I like something, I am passionate about it. And to me, Conexiom is one of the best things that ever happened in my industry with what we did. And so what I find that working with Conexiom is very easy on the mapping, as long as you're getting an invoice in as a PDF file, or at one time you could bring them in if they were faxing. Conexiom had a way to bring in fax drivers. I don't know if you still do that, Mark. I'll need you to comment on that.
Yeah,
but as long
as the ability to help people with that as well. Yep.
Okay, good. Because that was a plus, because sometimes you can still have small vendors, mom and pop type vendors that aren't as sophisticated. And so some may still fax. Now that's rare now. Most people do EDI. And I'm sorry, not EDI. Most people do PDFs and email. So when this comes in, it kind of passes through your system to Conexiom. Conexiom takes that invoice and they map it to the fields that you need in your system. And you can actually determine on each invoice for each vendor what you want to bring in. If your vendor has a note field and you want to see those notes, you can have Conexiom to bring those in for you to see. So that's the beauty of using Conexiom, is when you get this vendor invoice, you look at it and you say, okay, I have this pieces here that I need to see this. Where can you do this? And Conexiom goes, well, yes, we can do that. And it'll be there on the system for you to see it.
So it sounds to me like this is all stuff that happens inside the four walls of your business. You didn't actually have to reach out and get your suppliers to change anything.
No, not at all. You use each vendor individually. Ever how that vendor sends the invoice, you take their vendor and it maps. And one other things with vendors, sometimes their credit memos are different than their normal invoice. That's no problem with Conexiom. They can also map the credit memo for that vendor as well as the standard invoice. Now, every now and then you'll have a little hiccup or gotcha. The vendor may change the format on their invoice. If they do, that's okay. You will get an error message from Conexiom going, hey, we can't map this, we can't match. So you can instantly stop all of those invoices from erroring out. Conexiom holds them for you. You enter a support request and go, here's the issue. They changed their map. This field now goes here. And Conexiom support is so fast that the lag time is virtually nothing for them to get that mapping changed. And the minute they get it fixed, you flip the invoices coming in back on, and it takes all of those new invoices and now converts it over, and they're coming in beautifully. And like I say, it's a very quick fix. My experience with Conexiom support has been very positive, very good. And you can always add new vendors. When I add new vendors, within 2 or 3 days, they're in there. And so that's another big plus, that you can constantly add, and you don't have to wait, oh, gee, I got to wait 4 weeks, 5 weeks before they can get this done. Conexiom doesn't work that way. When you present it to them, they hop right on it and get that vendor added for you.
Well, I'm going to have to give that report back to our head of services and let them know that we're doing a good job for you, Sis. So that's good to hear. Now, were there any unexpected outcomes that you achieved with Conexiom? You talked about the things that were the challenges you were looking to face, which was to free up the time of your team because they were being overwhelmed, and to get the invoices in earlier so you could capture your early payment discounts. Was there anything unexpected that you found came out of it? Like, what about, how did the employees feel about it?
It was seamless for my employees because they did not realize it was Conexiom doing the magic for them because it came into the normal queue that they worked in. So it was not a challenge for them at all to do anything different. They did their work like they did every day. So Conexiom was kind of working behind the scenes. So like I say, it's virtually magic for the end user, the people using it every day, because of the way it comes in. And I'm assuming most people would use EDI. And so when you're using EDI with your platform, even outside of Eclipse, you have an EDI interface and queue that you work. And so therefore it's coming into that, and the people working with it, it's going to be the same. It won't change for them. There won't be a challenge at all on that end. Now, the unexpected side of it was how easy the transition was and how easy it came in, and that there wasn't a big learning curve for my people. I thought, okay, anytime you add a third-party package, you're going to have issues, you're going to have hiccups. People are going to say, I don't know what to do. It wasn't like that. It was so seamless that it just made their job easier. And I just explained to them on the screen, I said, look, when you see this partner here that says Conexiom, this is who these people are and this is what's happening. That was the only learning curve, to say, hey, when you see a vendor partner with this name, that's who it is.
So if I got it right, you already had EDI in place, but it was only for a certain number of your suppliers. So the rest of them weren't going to do EDI with you, but you needed to automate their invoices. So you're redirecting those into Conexiom. But from a knowledge perspective in Eclipse, particularly because they have that EDI 810 queue where exceptions get managed, where the invoices get automatically vouchered, they were just continuing to do the work that they already did in EDI. They just got more of it. Am I hearing that the right way?
That is correct. That's exactly correct. And when I talk 810, in the EDI world, these numbers are the same no matter what industry. So an 810 is a vendor invoice. I don't care if you are a janitor. If you have an EDI and you get an 810, that means that's the invoice. So the terminology that we use for EDI and Conexiom, those go side by side together.
Okay. And when you think about the other parts about the change management process, you ended up in the one example you talked about having somebody whose labor was surplus. You actually didn't need one of those people. You moved them to another part of the company. What kind of advice would you give to the people here today about that change management process in terms of, how do you handle when people's roles change, or when things, or when what they used to do isn't needed anymore?
Well, it's funny because I find that a lot of people are willing to learn. They want to learn things new. So, and I'm a firm believer is I'm not going to add something that will cause me to have to let people go. My technology, I want to use it so it helps me grow, not let people go. That's my motto. So with Conexiom, I was looking for it as a way to let us grow so that now in other areas of the company, in sales or AR or warehouse or purchasing, we have needs. And so when I spoke with my AP department, I said, would any of you like to try something else? And I did have one person who did. They wanted to go to purchasing. So that was a transition. Now, if I did not have any of these people that wanted to move, I was not going to let them go. I was going to keep them because we could still use them. And it would just mean that people didn't have to work themselves so many hours like they were doing. But I was curious that when I moved a person out, was it going to put us in a bind? And if it did, then I would make a change to bring the person back in the office. It just so happened Conexiom did so well that it didn't put us in a bind. It took the bind off that I was able to move this person where they wanted to go, and we still kept growing. So it was a big plus all the way around for us.
That's a real theme that we seem to run into a lot when we talk about sort of business transformation and digital transformation. And one of the things that I seem to hear repeatedly is that is right, like what you said. Use technology to allow the company to grow, not to let people go. And I like your rhyme with that, Sis. It works for me. And I think I think that's an important theme to remember, is that if people feel like their job is going to be threatened as a result of advancing the company's digital agenda, it's probably going to get in the way of being able to make the advances you're looking for. Have you seen or experienced that anywhere?
Yes, I mean, that's normal in any industry and anything. When you're bringing on something new and you're telling people that we are interfacing this part here and it's going to start doing this job for us, they'll start panicking and going, oh no, what am I going to be needed for? So I feel like it's very important to always let people know this is not to get rid of you. This is to make your life easier. This is to help us grow, and that we will move on, and that you need to be open-minded. And sometimes you have people that refuse to be open-minded. They will cause problems. They'll be so negative that will affect other people. And it's a given thing that you have to have discussions with them and say, you know, you're either going to have to get on board or there will be a change made. And those are the hard conversations. But, you know, I don't find a lot of that like you did many years ago when technology first came out. Now people are learning to embrace it more because we're bringing in younger generations that all they know is this technology.
So when we first started this 10 years ago, you were right. Our company was focused on helping automate the inbound customer purchase orders and turning those into sales orders in Eclipse. So it was great. I mean, you were our first customer that we did an accounts payable invoice automation with, which was awesome and fun. And you were great to work with, Sis. Really good
Thank you.
collaboration and partnership, which is, I think, how we look at it with most. I know that, you know, our platform's expanded and we're doing other trade documents today, like advanced shipping notices or order acknowledgements. Can you talk about, you know, your thoughts operationally on why those are important in today's world?
Most definitely, because the advanced shipment notifications, that's going to let you know when to expect this material in. And if you've got a truck or 2 or 3 loads coming in of something, that also lets your warehouse know to be available. And the other side of it is if you're looking for this material for customers, you've also got a notification that you can let your customers know, I'm sorry, especially this day and time, because we know things have been slow since COVID, that we can say, hey, the vendor's behind, but we know it's going to come in on this date because we got a shipment notification. And also, if when you send in purchase orders, if the pricing is wrong, you get that notification back right away so you can get that adjusted. So when the invoices come in, everything matches cohesive and it saves that side of it also, which is a big positive.
Yeah, I guess there's 2 parts to that acknowledgement. One is the price, like you say, and the other one is even if the requested delivery date is valid.
Correct.
And do people, my history with it is historically, you know, those acknowledgments have often been received and stored in the email as a file for audit purposes. So if you have to go back because something doesn't arrive when expected, then people go looking for it and then, you know, talk about whether or not, you know, what they want to do with their vendor. It sounds like more and more today people need to be more proactive with those kind of documents and actually understand what their vendors are promising right out of the get-go, because the world is so upside down now.
Right, and utilize your tools that you have there, because with the 855s, 856s, here again, these are EDI numbers on some of these things. When they come in, your system, I know, has tools to help you monitor those and keep up with them. And you can even have some of them are actually, let's say if it's coming in for shipment notification, it could be attached to your PO if your system allows that. and you could just tap on an icon and have that notification to pop up. So it actually changes the date in our system and let us know that this date of when we are expecting material came from the vendor. It gives us a code that says this is from a vendor ship notification. So we accept that more as gospel than as a guessing date of we think it's going to come in. So that's another big plus side of it when it's coming in. It's very important with this situation, with the way everything's going right now.
All right. So those are some very helpful pieces. So if we look at today's environment with supply chain disruption, do you find that your strategies to get ahead of your supply chain issues and to make sure your invoices get in and paid on time gives you better access to supply? Like, does that give you a competitive advantage in the world today?
Yes, we had a huge competitive advance because at least with Dakota, we ordered in advance for this information, and we just had a record year for COVID. With COVID going on, we set records. We were not hurting at all because we had our material. We got it in, we paid like we should, and because we always paid on time and paid like we should, we even got special concessions with vendors since we were ordering large quantities up front to make sure we didn't run out of things. So I'm very proud of Dakota because we did a really good job this past year.
That must give you a real strategic advantage in the market.
It has.
And that's a big leap of faith from your leadership team to invest heavily in tough times. That takes a lot of courage.
And it was smart for them too, because here again, we were the people that were not out. I mean, we had a lot of competitors coming to us looking for material. And like I said, we broke a record. It was, people were worried that people working from home, how is this going to work? Well, I was a road warrior for 28 years. For 28 years, I flew out every Sunday and Monday and back on Friday. So when I was home, I've always, since 1985, I have not worked in an office. My office would be in my home. And my thing is, we always found that everybody that worked from home was more productive and got more done than in an office because you don't have the chit chat time. You don't take all the breaks like you normally would because you just sit there and work and knock it on out. So what people have found with COVID, of where they thought it was going to be terrible with people working from home, they were seeing the same thing, that, oh my goodness, these people are more productive. We're doing more. And with Dakota, depending on your job, if you're not working the counter or something like that, or in the warehouse, we have people that are still in AR and AP that still work from home and maybe elect to come into the office 1 or 2 days a week. So our people have the option now because it's worked out so well. And when you've got happy people, you've got people that are being productive and they're going to be loyal also.
That's a really good point. And one of the things that we're hearing a lot from distribution leaders, and actually in manufacturing as well, is as the people of my generation, and you can see a little bit of the gray in my beard here, Sis, are starting to reach that age where we're looking towards retirement, and there's new generations of workers coming in. A lot of the work that we would start out doing, of which data entry was one of the big jobs, are not seen as highly desirable functions for people in their new careers. So in the world where we're competing for resources, we're seeing a lot of motion where people are saying they're having a hard time finding people to do the data entry kind of work that they used to do. Have you seen any of that in your travels?
No, not as bad. Because the thing of it is like I say, with the plus of you can have them working from home or in the office, most people, well, I shouldn't say that. Most people are happy to have a job. Some people like just being home and doing nothing. You're going to have the exception to the rules. And you have to deal with those. Some people, they need an office. Now, I'll say one of my children works for Lowe's. She's very high up in Lowe's management at corporate, and she hated working from home. She is so glad to be back in an office, but she's a person that needs an office environment. And so she just felt like that she needed the connection and it wasn't her thing. Yep. And she said she didn't feel like she did as good a job working from home as in the office. And so you've got two sides of it. So with our technology now, we can now work either way, which is what makes it beautiful. So like with Conexiom, you don't have to be in an office to take advantage of a Conexiom. You work from home. We know that. You work just the same as you always do, no matter where you are. So that's always a big plus this day and time.
I guess, so Bojan has asked, what are the cons to using Conexiom? So what would be the downsides? What would be the things that you would feel were a challenge for you and things that you would want to manage around?
Well, being the very first guinea pig, we had to go through the mapping of the invoices and setting everything up basic. And, you know, we would have to keep trying to see what was coming in and what was not coming in. A lot of that has already been addressed for you because they already use a lot of these vendors. They already have a lot of these maps. But at the initial, for me, it was the mapping side of it and getting the vendors, getting their invoices coming in. Now, Mark, I want to ask you a question. When vendors send in their invoices now, do most people have them to come straight to Conexiom, or do they still route them through their system over to Conexiom? Do you know on that?
That's a great question. The vast majority of our users still have don't change anything for their suppliers. Their suppliers continue to send the invoice in to them, and then it gets redirected automatically using rules into Conexiom, so that the vendor doesn't have to change anything.
So the problem would be the rules. I'm glad to hear that, because this was the hard thing is whenever you have rules, and it could be that your rule coming in as when you get an invoice from this email, you have a rule that says send it on Conexiom. Well, if vendors change their people that are sending that or their email that's sending this, then your rule kicks out and the invoices aren't going through. And so that's something you have to monitor. And the problem is the downfall on that is when it's coming in, if your rule is broke, Conexiom doesn't know the rule is broke. So the issue's on your side. So you may hear from a vendor, why aren't you paying my invoices? And you go looking, oh my word, they're all setting out here. They never made it over. So that's one con you've got to watch out for and be careful.
And actually, that's a really good point. And so there's, and if we haven't done this with you, Sis, we should, because there's a new functionality that we call rules-based document processing, where we actually have made the rules easier to apply at your end, make it just send everything over, and then we've built the filtering or the classification of what's an invoice and what's not an invoice into our platform. So your team still sees all the emails like they already have, but they don't have to send anything to us. And anything that's an invoice gets automatically processed. So that's something that we should talk about, because that's a good point. That was one of the issues in the early days that we noticed that needed attending to. So,
right. And this was at CAP where we had the issue that was so bad, because the other thing is if the vendor sent you in acknowledgments, the acknowledgments would go over to Conexiom and they would be kicked out. Now, I had all the errors sent to my email. So every day it would tell me how many invoices processed. And then if something didn't process, it said unprocessed or unapproved on it. And I could just jump into that email and see what's going on. And sometimes it would be because it was an acknowledgement and I would just go, oh, I don't care, ignore
not an invoice. Okay.
Yeah.
So we got another question here, which is, does your solution match the PO with the invoice? And for this person, they had developed an RPA solution to auto post things, but they're wondering if the vendor invoice is wrong and how does that match? So maybe you can talk about your experiences with the matching of the invoice.
Sure. So when we come in, we match line item level, meaning that the PO must be the correct PO number, the quantity must be correct, the product description must be correct, and the pricing must be correct. So that's what's line item. Looks at each line item on the purchase order, and the vendor invoice looks for that and matches to it. If all of that matches, it automatically sets this payable up as approved to pay. We don't have to touch it at all. Like I say, it goes in, no human person has to deal with that.
And if
now,
it doesn't
if one
match,
of those,
there you go.
so the exception is if it doesn't match, then it sets in my 810 queue or would be in an area for you to say it doesn't match. And I actually get a message with our system that says there's a quantity issue or there's a price issue. And therefore, then we have to match one-on-one. I look at the PO, I look at the invoice to see what's wrong.
And so for people that don't have Eclipse, which has an 810 queue, Conexiom also has now the ability to flag the mismatches in a Conexiom screen. So to say, hey, the price is wrong, or the quantity is wrong, or the item code doesn't match what's in the system. So that's new and enhanced functionality that's been developed since we first deployed with you. That's also now available. So for that question, that would be one I'd recommend you get in touch with us, and you can probably talk to Sis about her experiences as well, because she has made herself available to you, and we can talk to you about how we can help you with that. There was another question, which is, how does the pricing work? Are there upfront fees? Is it flat fees monthly? So the issue around fees is Conexiom is sold as an annual subscription, and there are it's based on trying to target your high value vendors with a flat rate model, and then for your low volume vendors, this is something that's new that CISA would have just seen in the last year. We also have a transaction-based model for the low volume vendors. So there's two different models, and I would highly recommend that you would, meet with one of our account executives to walk you through how our commercial model matches up with your usage, so you can determine if there's a business case for you that's of interest. And
Mark, do you still work with tiers? Like, if you have 1 to 25 vendors you want to start with, or 50 to 100, do you still do tier pricing? I'll just ask that for them in case anyone want to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So we do. And so depending, our model has evolved a little bit since we started with you. So we have a model that's targeted at our small and medium business vendors. And then we have models that are for mid-market and then up to the large enterprise. So depending on what kind of business you are, we should have a model that matches and fits for you, and that would be a good fit for your business.